Hello, hi. This is going to be a video on how to teach from a book that is hard to read with a lot of information. So we have some techniques to go over, and I've created a PowerPoint, and I believe the best way to teach a class like this is to actually create a PowerPoint of about 20 pages. It's really not that much information because you're not going to overload the page. So let's jump right into one that I have already started. And this is one right here. So as you can see, this is New Testament survey, biblical covenants, and I just did weeks 1 and 2 since that was already covered. So if we go into the actual book first before I get involved in this, just to show you the book itself. And this way, now I can go into each different thing and show that. So if I go up here to files, actually, where I have already downloaded the book. You see, first let's go into the syllabus. This is the New Testament survey, so I just want to concentrate on here. But actually, you can do any subject, any book, any class. You can follow this format, and it will help you out. So the first thing you're going to do is actually follow the format of the syllabus. You're going to look at that. As this opens up, here it is. Okay, so as you can see, we can go down here and increase that size. Okay, so now as you can see here, the New Testament survey, and just give you an overview, you want to definitely teach towards the course outcome. So at the end of this course, we want to provide overviews of the New Testament. And when we say overview, we really mean overview. You're not meant to teach every single word in the textbook. Your job as an instructor is to give the highlights and then have the student go back and read and write a paper on what they have read. All right. Okay. And so at the class location, we want to make sure that the student will develop these following skills. We want to make sure that they can develop a personal relationship with Christ, magnify the word of God through the grace of God, and to the working of the Holy Spirit. All right, you want to make sure that they have a basic understanding of the author who wrote it, recipients. Make sure that we identify any historical, historical or political themes within the New Testament. Then what we're going to do is summarize and interpret the content. Now, all of this may not be done all of the time in one classroom, but over time, we're going to hit all of these articles here. So now I want to move on to the textbook. So this is the textbook that we were getting some complaints about, that it was a hard read, that it was a lot. And so I wanted to show you some techniques on how to simplify this reading here. So let me enlarge this as well. I think that's big enough. All right, so this is New Testament survey. And it goes into the book. And of course, we don't expect you to teach this entire book because it is 593 pages. There's no way we're going to read this in the next 9 weeks. And we're already in our second week already. All right. So as you go down, and first, let's go back to our syllabi here. In our syllabi, of course, will tell us where we're supposed to be. So in week number 2 is where we are now. It went back a little bit to the week 1 because we did see that there were some difficulties here. So what I did in this PowerPoint is I'm combining weeks 1 and 2. And so for this particular course, then you're going to start on week number 3 here. So for weeks 1 and 2, it says we're going to read pages 23 through 42. Now, when we say read, what we're going to do is actually pick out highlights, okay? And for Also, for the mundane setting of the New Testament, I will leave that for homework for the student. Okay. Now, for chapter 3, we're going to have them read that and then write a paper on mundane settings, meaning just everyday life of what was going on during the New Testament time, before the New Testament, in the AD period. Okay. Or the BC period, actually. Okay. Because the AD period doesn't really start until 3 years after Christ's death. All right, so everything before that is BC. Now, so then we talked about religious and psychological or physiological settings. We're definitely going to do that in our next PowerPoint. So we're going to go over that part together. And then we're going to have the students read information about the canon in the New Testament. And they'll be in pages 101 through 112. Again, they're going to pick out some highlights and then talk about those highlights or write about those highlights, okay? So let's go into it here. So this is a syllabus. So we know that we're going to start on page 23 to 42 for 1. And then we're going to have the student read and write a paper on the next one. And then we're going to go into 3, okay? And so when we pick up on our PowerPoint, we're going to pick up on page 67 through page 98. And we may not even get to 98. We may get enough highlights and to fill our PowerPoint. And that's going to be enough because we just want to show up some of the highlights because of the extensiveness of the book. And then we can have the student again to do that part. So now let's go here again to the textbook, and we want to go to page 23. Okay. Here's a shortcut 23 right here. If we want to, just put 23 in there and hit enter. Automatically takes you to page 23. All right. So chapter 1. That's where it's reading. And we get into this, and it talks about the period of the Greek, the Macedonian, a Maccabean. Maccabees is what they call it, a Maccabean period and the Roman period, and then a summary on that. You don't necessarily have to go through every single one of these. In fact, we're going to skip it all together. How about that? All right. So when we get to the Greek periods, I kind of went through this, summarized it. What I did was look at some of the highlights here, read a couple of lines, see if that's something that really catch your interest. What you want to do is find something that's actually going to catch your interest. So either at least take the title here, kind of scan and see if something in there catches your interest, and then here as well. All right, so we're going to go through that on a PowerPoint so I can give you a better idea of what I mean. All right, because if you're trying to read everything word for word, it's a lot. There's a lot to do in just 1 week. All right. So you don't have to get very detailed on every single thing here, because some of it we can just skip because it's really a part. It's just the history of what happened during those 400 years of quietness, and we don't need to read every single word because there's no way we're even going to remember what we read. All right. So again, you want to look at some highlights. What I normally do is look at something that might be titled or something in bold, and then I might read a couple of sentences there to see what gets my attention. May read over here a couple of definitions over here. Maybe some of this may get my attention just to have something to share with the student. What you're doing is showing the student some highlights. All right, so let's get into our PowerPoint. So the New Testament here, and if you know how the PowerPoint works, I put the New Testament, put your week name there. And then the first couple of highlights I did was part 1. And I copied and pasted this from our syllabus. So you see our syllabus here was week 1, part 1. All I did was do a copy and paste, right? And then copy and paste what I wanted. So mainly I did political part 1, so we can just make sure that we stay on title. So what I wanted to do is pick up these things: political, cultural, and religious antecedents or sediments. Sorry, pronunciation is not my strong suit. Anyway, let's move forward here and go back to the PowerPoint. So I copied this from the syllabus here. All right, part one, and then we copied the title of chapter one. We copied the title of chapter two. Okay, and then I went back and I copied and talked about what we will cover. The Greek period, right? And again, we got that from the um, syllabus. The Greek, the Maccabean, and the Roman period is where we got from the syllabus here. Okay, so that part, and then also from the textbook. So let's go back to the textbook here, and I believe if we go back to page 23, because I think I skipped a page just to show you an overview here, and from the textbook, this is where I got that the overview. So I copied and pasted these three things as well, just to say we're going to do an overview on here, and then we copied that to the PowerPoint. Okay, so we see that, and that's the next page. So you see, you're not putting a lot on each page. You don't want to overcrowd the page when you're doing a PowerPoint. You definitely don't want no more than like 6 sentences, and you just want to make those really large because when somebody else is viewing your screen or when you're sharing your screen, it doesn't look as overcrowded. So first we talk about the Greek period. Just from history, we know a little bit about the Greek. We know that there's a lot of statues, right? So then I put in a question, let's talk about it. So you want to look at our textbook and want to have the student pull up their textbook and say, let's talk about the Greek period if you had a chance to read it. What happened during that Greek period? So this is an opportunity for you to give time and let your students talk a little bit about what they read because you don't want to be doing all of the talking, okay? You don't want to be preaching or lecturing to your students. Most students learn by participation, hands on. So if you do that and you allow them to talk about what's going on, it says, let's talk about it. And then you give your page number, all right, on the Greek. So let's talk about it. So it talks about some of these study goals. I didn't necessarily copy all that. Again, do not worry about copying every single word. But here is the Greek thing now on page 24, right? So we can go back to our PowerPoint if you were doing your PowerPoint. And we can put in that this is going to be page 24, okay? And always hit save because you never know what might happen here. You don't want to lose what you've done. So we know that they did a lot of statues. They was worshiping a lot of gods, and they did a lot of statues back in that day and time. Go back to our textbook here, and we want to ask the student. We'll talk about it. Did you get a chance to read anything in chapter 24? Okay. All right. If you haven't, let's take a minute to go ahead and just read this first paragraph here. All right. So they're reading the paragraph. You can actually have them to read the paragraph aloud to the classroom. Right. It says in the Old Testament times, King Saul, David, and Solomon ruled over all 12 tribes of Israel. I found this very interesting, right? Because we already know that. We're familiar with the Bible. We know this part. Then the nation split into 10 tribes. So this is some background information that the Bible doesn't recall. We know that there was invasions, that some were captured, but we didn't hear about the split or how it was split. We knew that there was a split, but we didn't know how the split occurred, right? So then, as I was seeing here, you'll see that the nation split into 10 tribes, northern kingdom, Israel, and then the southern kingdom of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, and what you got absorbed into the tribe of Judah. So you don't hear about the tribe of Judah, but the tribe of Judah actually consists of two tribes, Benjamin as well, which we know Benjamin was a baby boy. If you talk about the sons of Israel, Benjamin was a baby boy, right? And then so you have Judah, and then you have the baby boy. I think Judah was actually the second son born, but Judah was part of the Benjamin tribe, or within the Benjamin tribe is the tribe of Judah. So we talked about the Assyrians. If you're reading this, you'll see the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom and took most of the inhabitants as exiles into Assyria. So a lot of you teachers also need to read somewhat, and just read the part that you want to discuss in class. You don't have to read the whole entire page. In fact, most likely, I'm probably just going to do this first paragraph only. We'll see where we go, right? Babylon, and keep an eye on your time because you only have an hour. Students get used to an hour. I know sometimes we might go a little bit over. That's fine. Um, but it's a 3 hour course, meaning that you're going to be talking, going over discussion for 1 hour, and the student's going to be writing their paper for the next 2 hours, however long it takes them to read and pull together, excuse me, a topic and write their paper on. The purpose of them writing the paper is to show proof that they have done their homework, right? So the Babylon took control of the Middle East, and they're going to need you as an instructor to tell them what to do next, or even how to read what we're reading. Okay, so you're going to set the tone for your class. You're going to set the tone for your class. We talked about the Babylonians, how they took control of the Middle East from the Assyria. So Assyria's first connected everybody, and then the Babylons came along and took the Judah part. And then if you read on, we'll see that the Persians were the one who actually set them free again. All right. Babylon exalted the people. The Persians then took control of the Babylonians and let the exiled people, including the Jews, return to their native lands if they so wished. Some did, others did not. So under the Persian rule, they began to have an intertestamental. Let me get that word pronounced. Some of you are gonna pronounce this word a lot better than I am. Intertestamental. Here we go. Intertestamental periods. All right. Sometimes called the 400 years silent years. These are the 400 silent years because of the gap in the biblical record. Let's hope I might be able to edit this, but probably not. All right, we're going to just let it go where it is. It's okay. All right. It's okay to laugh and have fun with your students, as long as you're doing some type of interaction with them. So they're not just falling asleep. They're actually going to enjoy learning. Once you get used to this format, you're actually going to love it. You're going to love it. All right. So then you realize you don't have to read the entire book. You can concentrate on one paragraph and let that paragraph be your lesson. And then focus on that. Tell your students to find one paragraph, that they like, and to read that paragraph and write their paper on that paragraph. You don't have to read the entire thing. You will see that this PowerPoint is only going to be built on a few of the paragraphs. So what we'll do is, fill out the highlights and then discuss the rest of it. All right. So the Greek period was that period, that 400 years of silence. That what they mean is that from the book of Malachi, which is his last book in the Bible, until the book of Matthew, there's a gap of 400 years where nothing was written or nothing was recorded in the Bible or in the um, years of this silence, even though we know about these. And some people say that this is the part that was left out of the Bible during those years, that there were information going on during those years, that there were Bible stories recorded. It's saying that, but the prophets, they're saying there was no prophecy, so there was nothing to write because everybody was kind of taken in and out of captivity during those years. Okay, so we're having a discussion with our classroom now. We go back to our PowerPoint and we see where we are here. All right, so we said that let's talk about it. We did that. So we go down here to the next PowerPoint and then we talk about the Old and the New Testament, right? From the Old Testament to Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great was part of what's going on in those 400 years of silence. The world did not stop during those 400 years. What was going on was that there was some years of Roman Empire taking over. And then the Greek Empire took over from that. And then that's where we find the New Testament being written in Greek, because now the Greek had now taken over, and they made Greek the main language. All right. And that's in your textbooks. So as we read that about the preliminaries of the Greek period, that's what we take from your book. So then I went on in and we discussed this. Let's discuss what's going on here. So with the Old Testament, it says after King David saw Solomon the 12 tribes, right? And then you see where from the textbook, I copied and pasted what was in here, right? But then I rewrote it with some highlights. So what we did here. All right, we talked about the 12 tribes. We talked about their inheritance. We talked about them being moved from their native land. We talked about them being returned to their native land. So as an instructor, I've read this, and now I want to assimilate it into a PowerPoint. So what I did in the Old Testament, it brought you back to what we already know, that these were the kings. And of course, this is in your book as well. We just copied and pasted and then made it into bullet points and kind of maybe reworded it so that we can better explain it to our students, right? Again, we're only going with the highlights. We're only going with the highlights. So we see that King Saul, right? David, right? It wasn't in that order. So King Saul wasn't the son of David. We know that's Bible story, let's hope, right? After King Saul was definitely the first king, and then David was the second king, but not a direct descendant, not a descendant at all. But then Solomon definitely is a descendant of David, right? They were kings over the 12 tribes of Israel. This was before the kingdoms were divided. Then the nation split into two, right? And when we talked about that, we talked about the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, and then the southern tribes of Judah, the tribes of Benjamin. So if you once as a teacher, once you've already copied this to your PowerPoint, you don't have to go back and forth to the book because you've already looked at the book in order to create the PowerPoint. I'm sure I'm going back from the book so that you can see where I got information from. Okay. So you all know how to read a power do a PowerPoint. You want to go hit slide, then you're going to say from the beginning or from my current slide. Since we've already in it, I'll just say from my current slide. Okay. So we talked about the Greeks, and this is you now explaining it or having a discussion with your students about this, right? And as we hit the next one, again, this was straight from the book. I copied and pasted that from the book, and then I reworded it, right? Or I made bullet points out of some of those sentences, and I kind of put it in a way that make it easier to understand. This was the Greek period, right? This is the preliminaries, right? So the Persian then took control of the Babylonians and let the exiled people, including the Jews, return to their native lands. And that's something that we talked about if they wish, right? Some did, some did not. So under the Persian, we begin to find, right, intertestamental period, sometimes called the 400 years. All right, and we know that this is the gap during those 400 years that they were being ruled by excuse me, it's a backup sometimes. All right, and so I come to the place and always put a question in your PowerPoint because when you find yourself doing all the talking, take a break. And your break is you ask them a question and then you be patient enough to wait until somebody answers. right? You wait, somebody else is gonna take some water. The southern kingdom of Judah was the tribe of Benjamin absorbed into the tribe of Judah. What does that mean? Now you just read what it meant. Maybe they didn't know, but let's discuss it. And then you can talk about the tribes, the 12 tribes, and you know, who was the tribe of Judah and who was the tribe of Benjamin. And because they might know, you'll tell them. If they say they don't know, then there's an opportunity for them to do some research and find out who was the tribe of Benjamin, right? Who was the tribe of Judah and how did they merge into one? Excuse me. And we know they merged into one while they were in captivity, right? Because sometimes you tend to lose your identity. And we know that Benjamin was probably one of the smaller tribes because it was the youngest tribe. Okay. And then we talked about Assyrian, how they conquered the northern kingdom. They took the 10 tribes, and how the Babylonians took the other two, and then how Persia released them. So then here it is. Persian then took control of the Babylonians and let the exiled people, including Jews, return. I'm going a little fast here to their native lands. All right. So this is that gap. Let's see. And they said that there are some non-biblical records that they did not put into the book. There's history on that. There's some books were left out of the Bible because they didn't feel like they were biblical enough. So they did not include. I'm not gonna argue with them. There's some people now saying we need to go back to the original Ethiopian Bible or something like that, but we're not gonna argue about that and get caught up in all of that because all that's gonna do is just bring confusion. So people get to the point that they don't know what to believe. You got to choose to believe something. All right. So we talked about during this gap what happened. Alexander the Great was from Greece. So we see that how the language of Rome, most of them began to speak Greek. And this was happening in the Middle East. This was happening in the Middle East, and then it gives some date. Okay. And then we ask, who is Alexander the Great? Some of them may know, some of them may not know. But let's go back to our textbook here. And what I did when I hit share screen, I just hit the little, I didn't select individual screen. I just select the little button and it just allows me to look at all the screens without coming out and going back in and coming out, going back in. Okay, I'll just increase this a little bit more. Then hour down. And then if you wanted to, with your students and talk about Alexander the Great, I believe there's something in here about who he was. He was a conqueror. And this part right here talks about who he is, right? The Hellenizational period, Greek culture called Hellenism. The Greek culture is also called Hellenism. And it has been spreading throughout Greek throughout that time. But Alexander conquest provided far greater emperors or imperatives or impetuous, learn how to talk, impetuous than before. The Greek language became the lingua franca. I said that right. Or the common trade. Became the main language. You can like reword this simple. So if I was teaching class, I definitely, hopefully, I won't be stumbling like I am now because I would have taken out what I don't want to say. Okay, I will make another easier way to say this. Like this became the main language. Just like America, we had a lot of different languages here, and we had to make a decision. We're going to make English our main language. Now, people still speak Portuguese and French and Spanish and, Mandarin and which is Chinese. Um, but we choose what we want to speak here in English. And now I found that Florida is trying to make their main language in Florida Spanish. And that's what they're doing. So as you notice, I'm skipping a whole lot of this because we don't really need all of that, okay? We don't really need all of that. Now, if you want to know more about Alexander the Great, but this class is not about Alexander the Great. So I skip a lot of that, all right? You want to make sure that you stick to your syllabus. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. We talked about those Greek periods, right? And the period that came before the New Testament. So just a little bit about the Greek culture, right? The Hellenization, called Hellenism. You see how I copied and pasted that and begin to just make bullet points out of it. All right. So let's say if I want to just change this because I was having problems with my pronunciations, I would just say that and make another PowerPoint here and say the Greek language common, became, right, the common language. You're going to rewrite this PowerPoint for yourself to better explain it to your students. So I'm going to take all of this extra out. So when you copy and paste, you definitely want to rewrite it to help you better explain it. Okay. So it said by the New Testament times, Greek had established itself as the street language. Even 300 miles away, people were speaking Greek. So you just told the students now. I can take some of this out that right? You don't need all of it. Just let it go. All right. And then you want to talk about that. So let's go down here. So I took out some extra stuff, and this is just to show you what you can do. All right. So then we talked about why was the change from why was this? All right. I think this was the answer to the previous page. So when it said on this page, it said, uh, you can contextually change. We read that. Why? Let's say why. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with my typewriter? Why was the language? I think I will spell check. Changed from Hebrew to Greek. Only there's your Y in there, right? And because I just rewrote this question, I'm gonna copy it. The Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And then you can discuss it once you ask that question, and they can give you, after they give you your answers, then you want to switch over here to don't know what the instruction is there for. All right. Okay, now, why was the language changed from Hebrew to Greek? And the answer, Alexander found it, or we could actually say Alexander who, that was his name, the Great. Founded 70 cities, modeled them after the Greek style. He and his soldiers married Oriental women, Thus, the Greek and Oriental cultures mixed to produce the Hellenistic culture. And so this is an answer. So once you ask your students this question, and then let's see if I want to make this a little larger, just a question. Oh, uh-oh, what's going on with the, right, let's make it a 36, right? All right, and here you are. Okay, so then, as you can see, what I did was insert some pictures, which we can insert some pictures, and then I always go hit pictures and always go from online because that kind of give you more to choose from. If you're not online on your computer, you want to just hit the stock images. You won't get as many. But this happens to be one. I was looking for something Bible, and this came up. This is just a reminder. You're teaching Bible school, Bible class. Just a reminder to throw in here. Old Testament has 39 books. New Testament has 27. And the way I remember it is 27 letters in the alphabet, right? I don't know what I'm basing 39 on. It's just got to commit that to memory. 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 in the New, for a total of 66 books. We see that this was written before Jesus was born. This was written after Jesus was born. All right. In the time in between those 400 years of when no books are printed in the Bible that can relate to that time period, we call those the silent years, because we didn't hear from the prophets or the Bible. So now we're in chapter 3, right? And this is where we go back to the syllabus. As a teacher, we go back to our syllabus and see chapter 3 puts us in week number 2. Okay. And this here, we on page 67 through 90. And that's the last part of the political, culture, and religious. Okay, I'll put this on pause. Okay. Okay. So chapter 3, we see that's going to start on page 67. This is what you're doing while you're preparing for class. So once you get your class, you won't have to go back and forth to the book. You can just stick with the PowerPoint all the way through and then have them read. So chapter 3, I'm going to put this on pause just for a minute. Okay. Sorry about that coughing here. Okay, so this chapter 3, we jumped fast forward to page 67. And this talks about the temple of Zeus. And we decide we want to talk about that. So now we're at for religious and physical logical settings of the New Testament. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to our PowerPoint. Let's see, I've already copied it here. And also we want to just jump on part 4 as well, just to give a quick highlight. All right. So this is where I stopped. And as you can see, We're going to go ahead and copy and paste this. And you can see down here, I've already put homework up here. So that's what I'm working. Sometimes I go ahead and put homework in the PowerPoint in advance. So we can see here, summary on the page. So for this class, I'm actually going to send you the PowerPoint so that you can use this in your actual classes PowerPoint. All right, so my homework is to tell them, remember we covered chapter 1. We told them to go ahead and read, find something in your reading in chapter 2 that captures your attention. I want you to write a 1-page summary about that, all right? And then include what stands out to you and compare it to what life is like today. I'm probably going to tell them also to do the same thing for chapter 3. Okay, and we are back. All right, so let's go ahead back to here. We're here on, we've just started chapter 3. And so I'm going to go to chapter 3 and see what kind of highlights we can get from here. So what I'm going to do here is just copy and paste this because it was just a title. And open up this next one. And place this. I don't think we're ready for this yet, or maybe that was old. I have a tendency to copy pages, keep moving. All right. So then for here, we're going to go back to the textbook. And we said page 67, we're here, right? Okay. And so these are some of the things that we want to cover. Uh-oh. One page. Lost my page. Go back here again. Page 67. Okay. So I don't know if we're going to get to some of these. So let's just go through. Let's say we'll take the first four. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have to do all of them. Okay. If you get a grasp of what's going on, then on your leisure you can read it. But for a class discussion, because we only have 1 hour, we can't do the whole thing. Just gonna take, let's take the first 4. Okay. And we're gonna see the goals as religious beliefs and practices, right? And I may take that too, just to see what some goals are in this part. So I'm gonna just copy that to the PowerPoint here. Export that a minute. V, Control V. That all came out black, so I'm gonna highlight that. Go to your home page and color. I want white, and I want it bigger than it is. Let me see. Right. So if I share my screen, the students can actually hear it or see it. Right. Go here and I'm probably gonna just do that. Delete. Put them on the same page, on the same line, so that I can have more room. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Uh-oh, my block went away. It's not my block anymore. Okay, that's okay. Let me just copy and paste it and put it back. My block went away for this one. I'm just gonna do this. Got the copy and PowerPoint paste. Let's do this. Just this room. See if I can get my block back. B. No, even worse. Okay. It doesn't want to cooperate. So I'm gonna leave it like it is. Sometimes it don't want to cooperate, but that's okay. I'm gonna do it like I'm gonna do it one more time. And try to cover that, but it's not gonna. Control C. And I'm gonna come back to the PowerPoint and see if it will let me again. We'll put all down the rest. Let me go to the top. Okay, so we got the square back. Gotta do everything all over again though. I'm gonna make this big and then make it white. All right. So then we said we're gonna talk about these things, right? And then what I normally do is just go ahead and duplicate the page. And then on the second page, we got the same thing, but I know I might erase this part, right? Okay, because we're still in chapter 3, so I want to keep that heading. And then I want to go here, and then I just want to, I thought this was interesting. So again, you're going to pull some stuff that you think is interesting. Let's go back to page 67. See how much stuff we skipped? Really don't have to read every single word. We just want to get some highlights, really. Just give us a little bit of history. That's all we really need to know. We don't need to know every little single thing. I mean, if a student wants to read it on their own, maybe they're a reader, they're good. But we have an hour to get through this as instructors. Okay. They have more time to read. You might have more time to read. But as far as what we want to discuss in class, we're going to keep it to a minimum. All right. So we're not trying to discuss the entire book. And then students will feel, I think, a sense of release as well if they feel like they're not required to read the entire book as well. They could just read a few highlights. All right, just a few highlights. All right, so here we are. How about some religious beliefs and like maybe this. Some of this we may not need the whole thing. Um, might just just for having it, or I might just copy and paste all three of this and copy this and let's see. And may have to hurry to this part. How many pages I got? I typically like about 20 pages in the PowerPoint. Gets us through an hour usually. Because of my color scheme going here, I want to change this to white. This white was the last one we used. It should still be white. And then I just want to probably make it just a little bigger so that we can see it better when we're sharing our screen here. It looks like the way this is written that we definitely got to fix it. It's got a little better. So sometimes we copy and paste things just move. All right, so I'm gonna talk about religious beliefs, right? Among the pagans, Jewish religions, and ways that pagan and Jewish religions said it contributed to the birth of Christianity. All right, I'm gonna put some stars here because I really like this one for New Testament surveys. Since we're talking about, we want to talk about. We often say that the Jewish religion is, uh, well, the Christian religion came out of the Jewish practices. Because you have to remember when Christianity started, they had no playbook. They really didn't know how to operate. So they probably took the Jewish teachings as part of their foundational training. As you will see many times, um, Paul came back to correct some things that Peter were doing, but then we find that Paul was doing it himself. As far as part of the Jewish religion, they still copycat on some items that came out of the Jewish training. All right, so let's put that there just as a token of what we want to talk about for our class. So what I'm going to do also is duplicate this slide. When I duplicate a slide, it kind of makes it easier for me to do. And so now I know I got it on this page and I got it on this page. So that means I can delete some things that I have on this page. And let's just leave the first one on this page that we want to talk about. Okay. And I'd probably want to just cut that section out and just have this as a belief period here. Okay. So as you can see, we're going to find out what religious beliefs and practices were going on. Because we see that there was a lot of superstitions going on among the pagans. And so we could say, we can ask a question for the students, why, and have them um, define what you under right understand about it, and just have them talk about it a little bit because hopefully they've been reading the book as much as they can. Again, we're not read about every little single word, so we get down here and we begin to the religious belief and practices. Is the first part, and we first one they talk about is paganism, which is also method or methodology, right? Paganism. We talked about pretty much their worship of other Greek gods, right? So it talks about the mother of Zeus and how he wrapped their baby in blankets, right? So if we copy this story here, we can see that this is a story of Zeus. And we can see that in paganism that Zeus was a Greek god. And it says that he had two brothers, and one of them was Hades, who ruled the underworld, right? That these gods had access to earth. That's what they want you to believe. So, on the paganism, we could simplify this and not try to go into too much detail. Um, one, and we can go in, one of the biggest ones was Zeus, right? And we can ask them, what did you read about him? Did you notice some similarities of the Christian religion, right? That's spelled right now. I don't know. See what comes up. Right? So even though I read that and attempted to maybe copy and paste it, but I felt it was a little bit too much to put on one page. So we could probably talk about it in class as you read it, right? And so we'll probably discuss it, give them something to talk about, um, as being one of the major gods that they um worship during those times. Um, because they said that Zeus had human traits of passion and love, hate, jealousy, and that uh, the gods excel human beings only in power. So some of this I don't really get caught up too much into there, but you are free to teach on what part that you would like to teach on. So it's a lot here, but we're not going to go into it, not too much. One of the others was emperor worship. Let's talk about that a little bit because that's also similar, right? Um, how people today would worship their pastors, right? So that's almost similar. Let's go back down here. So I'm gonna say religious beliefs and practices are just that's just the common one here. Uh, and I'm gonna say Zeus. What did you? And then the other one V was make that white and bigger. Let's see. I'm gonna duplicate this page. It's coming to be a lot, and you don't want to put too much on one page. So I'm just gonna duplicate the page and go back to the first one and take out this part, right? I'm gonna cut this one back to this first page. Okay. This one, the ones that comes in automatically, whew, tends to get small sometimes. You definitely got to play with it if you are new to PowerPoint. If not, you know how it does what it wants to do. Okay. And just for emphasis, I might want to just underline this one just to make it stand out as a question. And then this one, I'm going to put that. Okay. Want to maybe underline this as well. Okay. That right. Oh, what about this? Say, what about this? Yeah, underline, right? Some of these would worship people after they died. All right. So this page, actually, I was able to reword that. I don't need this. Again, also, this is just instruction on how you want to set up your PowerPoint. So let me delete that out. This one's going to be all finished for you. If you are teaching New Testament survey, it's just going to be on the first few chapters. Just to give you something to run on, you can create this PowerPoint any way you want to, any color scheme that you want to. All right, so that's all we're going to do on week 2. Now we're going to copy to this part of literary and historical, and then do chapter 4. Okay. All right, click. See. So this one had already, not already pre-prepped, it looks like. Right and bigger. Okay. So the canon is just a book of Bible books that they put together. They were all individual books. They called it the canon and the text of the New Testament. So let's talk about these historical materials. Right? And if we get lost, let's go back to our syllabus. That's what it's for. And we know that this starts on page 101. Because we did get lost a second. 101. Hit enter. It'll take us straight there. Chapter 4. So you don't have to read every single word. Skip around. Find your paragraph and move on. Let's go back to 101 because it's so easy to get caught up. Okay, so these are 3 things that we want to talk about. The text and the canon, pretty much, right? In fact, I think I'm gonna copy and paste this whole thing. And then once I get it on the PowerPoint, then I will edit it. So we're on chapter 4. Yeah, I see what I want to do now. I'm actually gonna copy it to, I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this page so that I will have, okay, there's 2 already. All right, I'll put this one down here since it kind of got out of order. And I'm gonna duplicate this one. Careful not to hit that delete button. All right, so this is the first one. So I'm gonna delete this first section, and I'm only gonna leave the overview part. I'm gonna make it white. This is what we're gonna cover here. And then when I get here, because I already have that there, I don't need it anymore. So I'm gonna delete that one. We're gonna take out the study goal word. We're gonna talk about this. and make that right, and endorse this. Okay, so we're going to talk about here, and we've got to make sure that the students can read it. Is it large enough? Sometimes these text boxes tend to do what they want to do. See, it's gotten bigger instead of smaller. It's kind of crazy there. Okay, so talk about how the early church managed at first without the New Testament. Because if you look at history, there was no Bible, no New Testament Bible for them to go by. Everything that they did was written for us to go by. But they had nothing to go by but what? The Jewish religion, right? So this is like some of the matters you'll be talking about in class. All right. So then we'll talk about how the New Testament came to be considered by the church. When the church decided what books was going to go in the Bible and what books were not going to go in the Bible. This was done systematically. So it's no surprise that books were left out because this was how they did things. And then we're going to talk about how we know our New Testament accurately represents what its authors originally wrote. Right? So then we'll go down here and this is on chapter 3. We on chapter 4 already, right? Yeah. So this must have been a duplicate page, the extra page that I don't need. So I'm gonna tell the system to delete this slide. And I'm gonna duplicate this slide because it already has some things I want on it. And I can always delete what I don't. So let's go here. I know probably not going to use these first two to start with. I was just going to do one. Not worried about how big that is right now because it will change in a minute. We'll go back here to New Testament. And then see, it talks about the canon, so we'll learn what that is, right? So we'll talk about it. So let's copy and paste that. Let's go ahead and replace that whole thing here. And then we'll talk about this again, white and bigger. And then if I want to delete these, just that arrow. And then delete, make this bigger and probably online as well. These things normally get bigger with the page. Okay. So this is just a discussion page. Once you got it on your PowerPoint, you can read it, you can discuss it. All right. So the term canon originally meant measuring. What do they mean by measuring? And then read, developed by what? Standard. So sometimes we get the word standard Bible or something like a yardstick. And we might want to compare the literal and the method historical meaning of yardstick as applied to the New Testament. Okay. So the canon refers to those books accepted by the church. So if you're discussing this or going over these highlights with your class, kind of get an idea of what we are doing here. Okay, so that so much now for the canon. And I'm at page 17 already. So, I don't normally like going over 20 pages, but sometimes we do. We 20 kind of puts you right at that hour of discussion. All right. And if you find yourself you ran out of PowerPoint slides, you could just, look at the book or just have them talk about something they got out of it. Okay. I'm gonna duplicate this slide. Y'all know how I do now. All right, and then I kind of delete this part out, most of it anyway, because I already know what I want probably to put in there now. So I'm gonna go now and find out the rest of what else I want to put in there. Again, you don't have to put every single thing because we talked about this, so we don't really have to put it in there. We talked about how the Christians didn't have any other books to go by. They went by oral traditions, right? They went by the oral traditions originally. But I think I like this as a discussion. So I'll put this in here because even though I'm discussing it, you might need it to discuss it with your student. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy it here. And probably should have just did a replacement. Perfect. Underline it and then I'm going to just increase the whole thing actually. Perfect. I'm going to delete this page too. And maybe delete this blank page as well because it's been doing a copy and paste. Okay, so I'm gonna and if we were to put it, we'll put a thing there. I'm gonna duplicate this page because I want to keep the top part. I can always erase the second part. And I'm gonna go here and see what else we have here. Because I believe if I go back to the syllabus, we're on week 4, and chapter 4, and that's it for us for this week class. So next week class, you can copy and paste something from here in the year if you want to. And then here and here, you should be back on track. Then you're going to grade your midterm only what you have highlighted and taught or have them to write their paper on. Okay. So if you haven't discussed it in class or you haven't asked them to write their paper on, then that's not something that you're going to create for midterm. All right. I'm going to talk over here. Before the New Testament, these things happened to them. They were written down, Old Testaments, and to instruct Christians. And we don't hesitate to append the interpretations. All righty. So that was enough there. See, we're not reading every single word, we're skipping some stuff. So canonization is probably our last part here that we're going to do. Okay, I'm going to copy this part. Put that in the PowerPoint. Okay, just a second of that. So I copy and paste this. So let me copy and paste again this, and I'm going to do a right click this time instead of Control V. That way I keep my whites color, but I don't want the underlines on every single thing. And then I want it bigger. And why is this getting smaller? I don't know. Okay. So we see quotations of the New Testament authorized by the early church fathers. Take that out, right? Because that don't need to be a separate PowerPoint. Just how it copied for some reason. So you have to watch that. So the early church decided which books were biblical based. Everybody was writing historical events because that's how they remembered them, and they would write it down. So what they would do was go in and decide which books they wanted to keep and which ones they didn't. This was done by the early church. So we hear people say that many books left out of the Bible did are absolutely correct. But that's not a concern that we need to worry about. All right. And some things that we're not talking about, we're just talking about um here's somebody that says he's a heretic named what? Marcion may have played a provoking role, right? I'm gonna do a point on that. I don't want this to be a point. Okay. He said there's no way. He tried to bring trouble. He tried to say there's no way a harsh God in the New Testament and a loving God in the Old Testament are the same, right? That Jesus came as a messenger of a loving God, that Jesus would kill that instigation of the harsh God, right? So he was causing confusion. So that's some good history about how the Bible came to be. Let's see what this one word is we're missing here. Might be something we don't have to do a new PowerPoint on. Okay. I'm just going to do that one sentence. We know the Bible pretty much. Okay. I'm going to make this as big as you. Okay. All right. Uh-oh. That's probably fine. Keep it all the same. All right. So you're going to talk about this as well. And I'm going to do one more duplicate slide. And I know I'm going to duplicate the second page, but let's see what we want to say in conclusion of chapter 4. So what I normally do is just go through kind of scanning it. The Holy Spirit will bring us a rationale, right? We want to do this. The Holy Spirit will bring us into the whole truth. Uh-oh. Do Control C. But I do want to keep going to see what else is here. We know that if we talk about writing paper, papas came from Jesus. When they copied documents, it took them weeks instead of months to copy it. These were copied from Greek to what else? To many other languages. Okay. They even talked about some interpretations. The example, the angels regularly speak, but eagles do not. So originally, eagle would explain the shift in some texts to angels. So you don't have to, you can see translation to English was here by John Wycliffe, provided translation form. But if you know history, he never had an opportunity to finish it. And this is what your students will be reading, and it doesn't hurt for you to just scan, scan over it, so you can have a clear understanding of what stands out to you. And what stands out to you is going to also stand out to your students. So you definitely want to do that. They said also through hand copying, there was errors that were made as well. Okay. So don't get too caught up. What we want to do is teach as much as this allows us to do so. And we know that some of the words of the Bible were misinterpreted. But we're going to end here because we don't want to say we made a rationale. The early church rationalized the Bible. They did. All right. Jesus himself affirmed, Jesus himself affirmed full authority of the Old Testament and Scripture, right? But made his own words and deeds equally authoritative and promised the apostles that the Holy Spirit would remain or remind them of his ministry, teach them of his, remind them of his ministries, teach them of its significance, and reveal to them the further truth, right? The canon of the New Testament consists then in of authoritative record and interpretation of what? Of God's word, self-revelation through Jesus Christ. I'm gonna leave that there, period. All right, so then we are done, and we had 20 pages, and 19 have them do their homework. You need a one, you could change that 1 or 2 pages on the mundane settings. They can go back to chapter 2, we read, have them homework and just say, read chapter 5 and 6 and be ready to discuss. Right? It's a lot. So they can read and scan it, you know what I'm saying? And be ready to discuss. All right, so we go back here and we look at our syllabus. So the following week, they're gonna do for week 3, 5, and 6. All right. So when you come back, you can discuss that on what they read, but maybe because depending on what week we're in, um, we can start on the week 4. Okay. And we're gonna just talk about week 4, talks about Mark, and then it talks about Matthew. Right, you see your page numbers. All righty. And then we know that that's going to begin on page 115. So we go back to our textbook and see where we're on page 110. 115, and you're at chapter 5. Study of Jesus' life. Okay. And just read overview, study guides, and then just read a couple of paragraphs here and there just to get started on, give you an idea. And what's important to you is you can go ahead and copy and paste that into a PowerPoint so that you can have something easier to discuss without going back and forth on the books, unless you want to. I've also shared my book in teaching as well when I didn't have time to do a PowerPoint and pretty much use the same method. Let's pick this paragraph and let's take this paragraph apart. What does it mean? What does it say? Okay, so don't let the size of the book overwhelm you because you're only picking out 1 or 2 paragraphs that you're really going to concentrate on. Okay, all righty. God bless you, and I will see you in the next class. All right, please reach out to us if you have any questions at Flowers Ministries Inc. or in FMI Biblical Studies and Seminaries. FMI Biblical Studies and Seminary. Thank you. I'm Dr. Mosley, and see you next time.